Next spring, you're going to be turning 55, and I was curious about your mindset coming into that age, because it's not old by any means, but it is one of those ages that you might start reflecting on what does it all mean.
Geez, I've been doing that since I was 30. I don't mind aging, but I definitely have an existentialist sort of dilemma all the time of what does it all mean, even though I feel like I'm a pretty idealistic person and I'm super, like, I guess not idealistic, but optimistic. I'm not cynical, I guess is one way to put it.
Yeah.
And I still believe in, like, engaging and working hard and all those things. But, I don't like the idea of mortality, so heading that way is hard for me because I love life so much. I mean, it's just, that's the bottom line really for me.
Well, and then getting older is a privilege too, though.
Yeah, no doubt about it. No doubt about it.
Well, I've been listening to the new album. It's fantastic. I really like it.
Thank you.
It seems, from my perspective as a music journalist, it's almost like a culmination of all of your influences. I mean, there's a lot of different things going on in there.
Yeah, I sort of went for it in that way. I kind of was like, I was feeling wistful about some of the punk records and rock records that I'd made, but I was still writing country songs, and so I just decided to kind of try to, in some way, to throw it all in there as far as attitude,
Yeah, yeah.
And my band, I think, we've been touring for a while, off and on together, probably for like 4 years, really. And so that definitely made everything freer in some way, because we knew each other better and better.
Yeah.
So, there's that. And I just think, like, on this record I had everything, like, the producer that produced it is a friend of mine, and he had produced Goodnight Tender too, and we just knew each other better and better musically, I think. And so there were all these things that made it easier to kind of bring in all those different influences and just kind of go for it, and not feel stifled in any way. Not that I felt that on Goodnight Tender, so to speak, but I think I was more nervous about trying to do a country record generally because I feel so much respect for, like, traditional country albums and, the kind of classic vibe of those. And so I didn't want to go for it and then have it be totally, just not what I wanted. And so on this record, though, I felt like I had done kind of that dip into the water in that way, and I wanted to sort of go a little bit to the left of center as far as that goes. By
going for it, I would think, too, that it keeps you from not trying to, fit something into a formula.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean, there's no doubt that, like, some of the formulaic writing in the kind of in hit country is pretty, even though it's formula, it's pretty crafty. It's pretty interesting, and, like, the turn of phrase, and pretty clever, like, those writers are good.
Yeah.
But I can't do that anyway. Like, that's not, I can do formulaic as far as production goes because I can look at it and take that apart and try that, but I can't, writing wise, I'm just going to do what I do. So, in that way, I just kind of wrote what I wrote, and then we let the production follow it. But yeah, I mean, definitely we just went for it in a way, which is good.
Was there a moment when you knew a song could be whatever you wanted it to be?
On this record, you mean, in particular?
I guess maybe in general, because a lot of times, when a musician's starting out, they can get very frustrated about, trying to fit something, but there comes a point where a song can be whatever you want it to be because whatever way you present it in that fashion, that's actually your voice.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've known that to a certain degree, but I've also come to a place where I really like to have the producer be a strong voice in it.
Yeah.
And so I kind of I try to, I mean, I'm not always successful, but I try to stay open to that.
Yeah.
And because that kind of gives me even more options, because it might be something where I was like, oh, I didn't even think of that, like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so I try to do that, and then I think help you do that is knowing that if that doesn't work, it can be what you want it to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can decide that. So kind of having that confidence in that way definitely like makes it so that you can take risk in the studio and have the producer kind of runs it, and you're not like holding on so tightly, I guess, is the thing.
Well, when I was listening to it, I really love that Dadgum Down song. But when I listen to that record, this does not come across as someone who is ever going to be defined as a nostalgia act.
Yeah, I mean, that one, I tell you what, I can't take credit for it because I wrote the song, but I wrote it on banjo, and I can't play banjo really, so I was sitting there with the band trying to like play through it, and my friend Brian, the producer, he was like, just put the banjo down for a minute, Amy. Step away from the banjo. And I did. And then it became this thing that is exactly, for me, like vibe-wise, what I wanted that song to be. But I would have never come to that myself because I can't play well enough.
Yeah.
So, but it also is like, it's not real, it's definitely left of center for what was happening with that record in some ways, when we went into it. But in the end, it turned out to fit right in,
Yeah,
like in some way. I don't know why, it just did.
What I really take away from it is you're constantly evolving. It's not like, you've had a lot of success throughout your career, but at the same time, it feels like you're always peeling new layers back.
Well, there's a lot. I mean, there's always a lot to learn, and I guess I'm a student, in some way, in that way, and it's not exciting if I just do what I've done before. Yeah, to me, it gets boring.
That's why
that happens. It's purely from my own short attention span, and I also find it exciting when artists. Like I grew up with Neil Young doing a different kind of record every year. You
never want to be pigeonholed.
Pissing people off.
Yeah. Well, it's that catch me if you can attitude, and I've always loved that with certain artists.
Yeah, David Bowie did that too. It's like just I'm gonna be who I want to be.
How do you measure success these days? I mean, you've had such massive success early on, and you definitely kept things going all through your career. How do you measure success these days?
Just by happiness, really, and I guess, and just feeling like I'm learning something artistically and not stagnating. That's success to me.
Yeah.
And to Emily too. So that's the thing that kind of keeps us hanging together, is that we both agree about that. You know.
Yeah. Well, you've always been a very politically active, socially active person for good reason, and it feels like a lot of the causes that you've championed over the years, that I've also championed, are all under attack as we speak.
Yeah.
How do you stay optimistic, and what's your thought of where we're at right now?
I stay optimistic because there's a lot of people that I see around me doing a lot of great work in the community. And so, for that reason, it gives me hope, because you know what I mean? I mean, there's like activists are just blossoming and in the face of really hard stuff.
Yeah.
And I mean, I for sure, I think people feel shut down, you know, I mean, and dismantled. I mean, because everything, you think about it, if you're an activist, pretty much everything you worked for the last, 8 years just got blown out of the water.
Yeah.
So that's hard, and so, I felt that way for a while. I was like, well, there goes another thing we worked on for a long time, everybody, and now that's changed. But the thing that gives me hope is that when you see people doing work, like, and on a community level and in small towns, they're not really letting that stop them from living the way they want to live and creating better circumstances for people, and, just working for the betterment of society. I mean, people are still doing that, and there's still great things happening. And
Yeah.
it's like, you know what? If the system is not gonna be there for us, we're gonna create our own.
Well, it's one of those things too, where it can be a very daunting thing to think about of what one person can do in this world. But I look at it too as like, well, if I make quote unquote my own backyard a better place, the hope is that others are doing it in their own place, and it all adds up to something.
I agree. I mean, I think that's the only thing we can do.
Yeah.
And that was, when a long time ago, when Emily and I were working with doing down in Mexico, visiting the Zapatistas, and Honor of the Earth was funding some stuff for them. That was the whole thing that they talked about, is that, like, they didn't need everybody to come there and change, help. I mean, they wanted our help financially, but they didn't need us to come give them a map of how to make their place better. They were like, you take care of your own backyard, and it's going to make the whole world a better place. So that was kind of like what they were saying to everybody.
Yeah.
That was flocking to, southern Mexico to learn from the Zapatistas and to be involved in that movement. And they were kind of like, go back to where you're from and make where you're from a better place. And that ultimately serves what we're trying to do. What's
throughout your career, and then just your journey in general in music, what surprised you the most about this journey?
How long we've lasted. I mean, it didn't surprise me, like, I didn't think we had it in us. It surprised me, like, I guess just like feeling lucky,
Yeah.
And, yeah. And so I wouldn't have thought when we were, back in the day when Emily and I were just, we've never really looked at things in that long term of a way, right? So we've always been like small goals, kind of in the moment, short term, not in a way that's like not having expectations to be, as good as you can be, but in a way of like, it wasn't to limit ourselves. It was because we wanted to sort of be thankful for every small step we took, because we were so young,
Yeah.
And I think, we would have never imagined that we'd be, in our 50s still playing some of the places that we were playing when we were in our 20s, which is, it's great. So that, and I probably would have not thought, I probably wouldn't have like imagined the industry to become what it, like all the technological changes that have happened. And it's pretty like amazing.
Yeah.
I know people get frustrated with it, but when you think, for all the bad as far as not being able to sell a record, but the good of it is, the access it's given people,
Yeah.
to like, it's like the ultimate DIY in some way,
Yeah. Well, my final question is, throughout your life as a musician and someone who's toured the world and met all kinds of people and been lucky to do a lot of great things, what has that taught you about what it means to be a human being?
I guess that's a hard question. Think about that. Well, I had a lot to learn to grow up, kind of, as a person, because I had kind of a short temper and would be, I guess, a little dogmatic sometimes, and just things like that. It taught me to be more humble as a human. That's the biggest lesson I've learned. And it's more important to listen than to talk, and all the things your mom tried to teach you, basically. Yeah, and I think not really seriously, like not judging a book by its cover. It's like everybody says it, but like to really learn how to do that is hard.
Yeah.
But it's pretty important, and like, cause I live in kind of a rural area, conservative. My friends are always like, "Why do you live up there?" And you're so much more left wing than everybody. But I'm like, I like it.
Yeah.
I like where I'm at, and and a lot of people would surprise you, you know.
Yeah.